Here's a number worth chewing on for a second. The average Social Security check in 2026 comes out to about $2,084 a month. Once Medicare Part B gets taken out, you're really looking at around $1,881 actually hitting your account. In most American cities, that won't even cover the rent. And yet, in 11 very specific towns across Texas, that exact same check stretches far enough for retirees to own their homes free and clear, put money in the bank every single month, and honestly just enjoy their lives. No state income tax. Social Security the state never touches. Property taxes that, in a few of these places, add up to less over a whole year than a single month's rent in Austin. And homes, actual homes, brick and mortar, porch and yard homes, going for under $200,000. This isn't a sales pitch, it's just geography. These towns are real, the numbers check out, and a few of them have histories so rich that the cheap real estate almost feels like a bonus on top. So let's walk through them, one at a time. Number 11, Texarkana, Texas. Most towns have a city limit sign. Texarkana has an entire state line cutting straight down the middle of it. Stand on the right block downtown and you're technically standing in two states at the same time. Texas on one side, Arkansas on the other. The post office on State Line Avenue is the only federal building in the whole country that sits in two states at once. That's not some tall tale. It's a fact you can look up, then go stand there and see with your own eyes. The town grew up around the railroad junction back in the 1870s, when the Texas and Pacific Railway came through and two separate towns started sprouting on either side of the line. They ended up merged in name, but never quite on paper. Two mayors, two police chiefs, one shared downtown. Even now, residents sometimes pay taxes to different states depending on which side of the line their house happens to land on. For retirees, it's the Texas side that counts, and it makes a quiet but pretty convincing case. The average home value sits around $203,000 per Zillow's June 2026 data. That's nearly $170,000 under the national average of $371,774. Property taxes come in lower than most Texas metros, and the cost of living, by most estimates, runs well below the national figure. What nobody bothers to tell you about Texarkana is that it's got a serious healthcare footprint for a town this size. Christus St. Michael Health System is based right here, and that matters way more than most retirement guides let on. Doctors, specialists, actual hospital access that plenty of smaller Texas towns just can't give you. The catch? Texarkana has spent decades battling a reputation it doesn't fully earn. People throw around the crime stats. But the Northeast Texas side, especially the residential neighborhoods fanning out from downtown, is a whole different story from the headlines. That gap between how the town's perceived and how it actually is, that's exactly why the home prices have stayed put, and exactly why retirees who do their homework end up sticking around. Number 10, Nacogdoches, Texas. The oldest town in Texas isn't some slogan a marketing guy dreamed up. Nacogdoches has the records to back it. Spanish records, mission records, land grant records, going all the way back to 1779. And the Caddo people were here long before any of that. By the time Stephen F. Austin was hammering out the terms for American settlement in Texas, Nacogdoches was already a real working settlement with streets and a trading history. Walk downtown today and you'll come across the old stone fort, first built in the 1700s as a trading post and now reconstructed on the campus of Stephen F. Austin State University. Students stroll past it between classes. To them, it's just ordinary, which is how real history tends to feel when you're living right inside it. The cost of living index here sits at 75, meaning 25% under the U.S. average. The median home value is $173,200, which is 43% below the national median. Median rent runs $921 a month. Zillow's average comes in a bit higher at $224,292, reflecting a modest 3.2% bump over the past year. One of the few towns on this list where prices are actually creeping up, which is worth saying honestly. The university brings something retirement planners almost never think to list: cultural programming, lectures, arts events, and continuing education classes that a lot of retirees genuinely get a kick out of. It also means the local economy isn't hanging entirely on one industry that could pack up and vanish. There's one thing that lingers without a clean answer. Nacogdoches calls itself the oldest town in Texas, but there's another Texas community, a couple of hours away, that fights for that same title on different grounds. This argument has been rolling on for decades. Nacogdoches holds its claim, the other side holds theirs. At this point, it's more a matter of civic pride than a factual dispute with a clear winner, but it's worth knowing the story's a bit messier than the tourism signs make it sound. Number 9. Corsicana, Texas. In 1894, workers were drilling a water well just 2 blocks from Corsicana's business district. The city had signed off on the project to expand the municipal water supply. What they hit instead was oil. Texas's first major commercial oil field stumbled into completely by accident, smack in the middle of downtown. The Corsicana oil field changed the whole state. It trained up the engineers and workers who'd go on to the far bigger Spindletop discovery in 1901. It gave Texas its first oil refinery. The entire story of Texas as an oil economy traces back, at least in part, to a water well that hit the wrong thing. These days, Corsicana is a small city of around 25,000 people, roughly an hour south of Dallas. The downtown has held together better than most: historic storefronts, a working Main Street, and a real art scene built partly around the Navarro College community. The Collins Street Bakery, which has been shipping out its famous fruitcake since 1896, is still here and still running. People order from it from all over the world. In its own funny way, it's a genuine point of local pride. The Richland Chambers Reservoir sits nearby, the third largest inland lake in Texas, with more than 330 miles of shoreline. That's the kind of retirement perk places charging double the home prices would be shouting about. Home values average $179,509 per Zillow's June 2026 data, down a slight 0.7% year over year. You can turn up 3-bedroom listings starting around $80,000 in certain neighborhoods. And if you own your home outright, the yearly property tax bill on a $179,000 house in Navarro County comes in well under $3,000. The dark chapter of Corsicana's history is a case that still splits legal scholars. Cameron Todd Willingham, executed in 2004 for supposedly setting a fire that killed his 3 children. Later fire investigation experts, including ones reviewed by the Innocence Project, found that the original arson science used to convict him was deeply flawed. The state of Texas has never admitted any error. The case is still disputed. It happened here, and the town carries it quietly. Number 8. Athens, Texas. Athens doesn't try all that hard to wow visitors, and somehow that's part of the charm. It's the county seat of Henderson County, about 75 miles southeast of Dallas, and it's been quietly certified as a retirement community by the Texas Department of Agriculture, a designation that takes meeting specific standards around healthcare access, senior programming, and community infrastructure. The certification doesn't automatically hand you property tax breaks, so don't let anybody sell you on that angle. What it does tell you is that local government put in a real effort to build the kind of infrastructure retirees actually use. There's a difference between a town that just happens to be cheap and a town that's deliberately built itself around long-term livability. Athens is honestly going for the second one. Home values average $256,934 per Zillow's July 2026 data, down 1.6% over the past year. That's higher than some towns on this list, but still $115,000 under the national average. And for that price, you're getting closeness to Lake Palestine, a 25,000-acre reservoir that pulls in fishing tournaments, weekend boaters, and lakeside cabin buyers. Real estate right around the lake runs steeper, but inside the city limits of Athens, the prices tell a different story. Henderson County has a sizable senior population and a hospital system, East Texas Medical Center, that gives retirees real medical options without an hour-long drive. Small detail, big payoff. Athens also claims, with a good bit of local enthusiasm, that it invented the hamburger. That claim is contested. Several other American cities make the exact same argument, and food historians have never all agreed on it. Athens holds its ground anyway. There's even an annual black-eyed pea jamboree that's been going for decades. The town celebrates itself and makes no apologies for it. Number 7. Victoria, Texas. Victoria is one of the oldest European-founded cities in Texas, set up in 1824 by Martín de León, the only Mexican impresario, handed a land grant specifically to settle Mexican families rather than American ones. The city was named Guadalupe Victoria after the first president of the Mexican Republic. That history runs underneath everything here. The street names, the Mission-era architecture, the Guadalupe River rolling right alongside downtown. What you don't expect, pulling into a city of about 67,000 people in South Texas, is a symphony orchestra. Victoria has one, and it's been performing without a break for decades. It's also got a genuinely strong regional medical center, Citizens Medical Center, which is one of the reasons the city keeps popping up on retirement lists nobody's paying attention to. U.S. News put Victoria in the top 5% of American cities for affordability relative to local income. The average home value sits at $217,561 per Zillow's June 2026 data. Cost of living runs roughly 15 to 18% below the national average, depending on which measure you're using. The Guadalupe River cuts through the heart of town. There's a paddling trail. Retirees fish it. People walk their dogs along the banks first thing in the morning. It's the kind of thing that never shows up in retirement guides, but ends up being the actual reason people stay. One honest wrinkle: Victoria took a direct hit from Hurricane Harvey back in 2017. The city rebuilt, and most of the infrastructure has bounced back, but the storm dragged serious questions about flood zone mapping and insurance out into the open, and those haven't been fully settled. If you're buying here, checking the flood zone isn't optional. Number 6. McAllen, Texas. McAllen is the economic engine of the Rio Grande Valley, and it's been growing faster than just about any comparable city in the country for the last 2 decades. That growth cuts both ways. On one hand, it means infrastructure, healthcare, and shopping options that small-town Texas simply can't match. On the other hand, it means McAllen is no hidden gem. People have already found it. What's kept home prices in check is the local income picture. The median household income here runs below both state and national averages, and that puts a ceiling on what the housing market can hold up. The average home value is $228,710 per Zillow's June 2026 data. Cost of living runs 21% below the national average. Healthcare costs are estimated to run about 21 to 22% under the national benchmark. For retirees living on Social Security, that healthcare number matters more than most folks realize. A town where your doctor visits, procedures, and prescriptions cost 20% less than the national average isn't just handy. Stretched over 10 or 15 years, it's tens of thousands of dollars. That's real money. The Rio Grande Valley has one of the densest populations of Spanish speakers in the entire United States. McAllen is genuinely bilingual in a way most American cities only claim to be. Depending on where you're coming from, that's either a comfort or an adjustment. Worth knowing before you show up. The open question here is long-term water security. The Rio Grande has been under strain for years, and South Texas is facing real questions about how much water it'll have as climate patterns shift. McAllen's city government has poured money into water infrastructure, but this is a regional problem no single city can fully fix on its own. Number 5. Harlingen, Texas. 30 minutes east of McAllen, Harlingen sits right in the middle of the Rio Grande Valley with a profile that somehow still slips under most retirement radars. The cost of living here runs 20% below the national average. The average home value is $200,595 per Zillow's June 2026 data, down 1.9% over the past year. Extra Space ranked Harlingen the third most affordable city in its database of 484 American cities. That's no small thing. The city has a VA medical center, the Harlingen VA Healthcare Center, which is a specific and pretty significant fact for veterans pulling Social Security alongside military retirement income. It's not a full VA hospital, but it handles primary care and specialty services, and its being here is no accident. The valley has a big veteran population, and Harlingen has built its infrastructure around it. The Laguna Atascosa National Wildlife Refuge sits just east of the city. It's one of the last surviving patches of Tamaulipan thorn scrub habitat in the United States, home to ocelots, actual wild ocelots, one of the rarest cats in North America, and a winter stopover for hundreds of bird species. The birding community knows all about this. If you're part of that world, you already get what living this close means. The one thing Harlingen has never quite cracked is its downtown. The commercial core has struggled for years with empty storefronts and stalled redevelopment plans. It's getting better, but slowly. The residential neighborhoods tell a very different story from the downtown one, and that gap between where people actually live in Harlingen and what the center of the city looks like is worth understanding before you make up your mind about the whole place. Number 4. Brownsville, Texas. Brownsville is the southernmost city in Texas, which in plain terms means it's warmer than nearly anywhere else in the continental United States for most of the year. January average lows sit around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not nothing, especially if you're coming from Michigan. The city's got a genuinely unusual backstory. It was established in 1846 during the Mexican-American War as a military encampment across the Rio Grande from Matamoros. The Battle of Palo Alto, the first big fight of that war, was fought on land that's now inside the city limits and kept up as a national historical park. That battlefield is a 10-minute drive from neighborhoods where retirees are paying $1,200 a month on the mortgage for a 3-bedroom house. The average home value is $196,964 per Zillow's June 2026 data. The city landed at number 4 on a national list of best retirement spots by affordability. Median monthly rent runs around $785. Cost of living stays consistently below both state and national averages. SpaceX picked the Boca Chica area just east of Brownsville for its Starbase launch facility, which is either a perk or a headache depending on how you look at it. Rocket launches are visible from parts of the city. Road closures happen. Property values in the immediate Boca Chica area have swung hard because of the development. But inside Brownsville proper, prices have stayed relatively steady. The SpaceX effect is real, but it's localized. The city is also home to the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, which brings that familiar energy. A younger crowd, cultural events, continuing education that retirement guides rarely factor in. But retirees who wind up living near a university bring up all the time. Number 3. Eagle Pass, Texas. Eagle Pass got its name straight from the landscape. Early travelers and soldiers noticed that Mexican eagles were everywhere along this particular stretch of the Rio Grande, launching off the wooded hillsides in enough numbers to give the crossing its name. The settlement that grew up here was originally called Camp Eagle Pass, a military outpost set up to keep watch over the border. It was the first American settlement on the Rio Grande. The early days weren't peaceful. The town got hit again and again by Lipan Apache and Comanche raiding parties all through the 1840s and 1850s. The fort that was supposed to protect the settlement had trouble even protecting itself. What survived it all was the crossing, a trade route between Texas and the Mexican state of Coahuila that's been active for nearly 180 years and shows no sign of slowing down. Today, Eagle Pass sits right in the middle of a tangled national conversation about border security and immigration. That conversation is real and ongoing. But underneath all the political noise, the city itself is working. Commerce flows, residents go about their days, and the cost of living has stayed at a level that keeps landing it on national lists. Travel and Leisure named Eagle Pass the most affordable place to retire in the United States in a recent ranking. The median home value runs somewhere between $185,000 and $188,000, depending on the source, with the city's Economic Development Office reporting a cost of living 17.8% below the national average. Median monthly rent sits around $632. The International Amistad Reservoir isn't in Eagle Pass, it's closer to Del Rio, about 60 miles north. Any source that plants it in Eagle Pass is working from sloppy geography. And that distinction matters if you're planning anything around water access. What the border location genuinely gives you is something harder to pin down: closeness to 2 countries, 2 food cultures, 2 markets. Retirees who move here often talk about a quality of daily life, fresh produce, taquerias, relationships that stretch across the river. That's specific to border towns and just doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. Number 2. San Angelo, Texas. The North Concho River runs right through the middle of San Angelo, and the city has spent decades turning that into an asset. There are parks, walking trails, fishing spots, and paddling access all along the river corridor. For a West Texas city of about 100,000 people, it punches way above its weight on livability, and it does it without the price tag that usually comes attached. Fort Concho was established here in 1867, and the fort itself is still standing and open to the public. Not a reconstruction, the original structures preserved right where they've always been. The parade ground, the officers' quarters, the barracks. It's a national historic landmark and one of the most intact frontier military forts in the country. It sits inside the city, a few minutes from downtown, and most residents treat it the way you treat any landmark you grew up beside: visible, familiar, and taken for granted. Ballard property tax protest pegged San Angelo's average annual property tax bill at roughly $2,242, the lowest of any similarly sized Texas city in their analysis. Tom Green County's effective tax rate runs around 1.13 to 1.45%, depending on the assessment. On a $190,000 home, that works out to somewhere between $2,094 and $2,755 a year. For some context, the national median property tax bill is around $2,400, and that's on a home worth nearly twice as much. The average home value sits somewhere around $178,000 to $190,000, depending on the measure, with Zillow's most recent figure at $178,137. Cost of living runs roughly 14% below the national average. Shannon Medical Center brings serious regional health care to the table. A Level 2 trauma center, which is the kind of detail that matters a whole lot more than it sounds when you're 70 years old and something goes wrong at 2 in the morning. The one honest caveat: San Angelo is in West Texas, and West Texas is dry. Water availability is a recurring concern out here. The city's managed it reasonably well, but drought and long-term water planning are just facts of life around here, not far off maybes. Number 1. Wichita Falls, Texas. Retirement Living, a research outfit that ranks cities across the country using weighted criteria for affordability, safety, livability, and healthcare access, named Wichita Falls the best city in Texas to retire in 2026. Now, that's a private organization's methodology, not a government certification, and it's worth knowing exactly what it is. But it's also worth pointing out that when you actually run the numbers on Wichita Falls, that conclusion isn't hard to land on. Average home value, $178,137 per Zillow's June 2026 data. That's basically the same as San Angelo and $193,000 under the national average. 22% of the city's residents are 65 or older, per census data, which means the senior infrastructure has had to keep up. And it has. United Regional Healthcare System is a full regional medical center. There are specialists right here. There aren't any 3-hour drives to go see a cardiologist. The city sits near the Red River up in North Texas, about 130 miles northwest of Dallas-Fort Worth. The name is a bit of a geographic joke. Wichita Falls, the waterfall the city was named after, was a modest little cascade that got completely wiped out by a flood back in 1886. What's there today is a man-made waterfall built in 1987, put up after a tourist pulled over to ask locals where the famous falls were, and nobody could give him a straight answer. So the city built one. Technically, it's not a lie, but it's the kind of story a town tells on itself. What's not funny is what happened here on April 10, 1979. One of the deadliest tornadoes in Texas history ripped through Wichita Falls, an F4 storm that killed 42 people, injured 1,740, and destroyed or damaged more than 20,000 buildings. The downtown core and the residential neighborhoods got hit at the same time. The city rebuilt from the ground up, and the modern housing stock shows it. Most of what you see went up after 1979. Modern bones, older character. The cost of living runs roughly 10% below the national average. Property taxes are manageable. And there's a detail most retirement guides skip right over. Shepherd Air Force Base is here. The base means a steady chunk of the local economy isn't riding the boom and bust cycles, and it means the community has long experienced housing and supporting people who moved here without growing up here. That's a different kind of welcome than a town that's never had to take in outsiders. For a retiree drawing $1,881 a month after Medicare in Wichita Falls, that money actually goes somewhere. Own your home outright, and your monthly costs for utilities, groceries, transportation, and basic healthcare are genuinely doable in a way that isn't just theory. People are pulling it off here and have been for years. 11 towns. 11 different answers to the same question. Where does Social Security actually stretch? None of these places are perfect. Some carry complicated histories. Some have real infrastructure gaps. A few sit in regions where water or weather raise long-term questions. No honest retirement guide is going to pretend otherwise. But the gap between what these towns offer and what people just assume Texas retirement looks like is huge. The assumption is Austin prices, Houston sprawl, Dallas traffic. The reality, for anyone willing to actually look at the map, is a state that still has corners where $1,881 a month covers a whole life, and sometimes more than that. Texas charges no state income tax. Your Social Security check shows up intact. Your IRA withdrawals are yours. Your pension is yours. And on top of all that, you're starting from a housing cost that's, in the best cases on this list, less than half the national average. The question was never whether it was possible. The question was always where, and these 11 towns are your answer. If one of them looked interesting enough to dig into further, drop it in the comments. There's more to say about every single one of them than one video could ever hold. One last thing before you go. The town that surprised most people in our research? It wasn't the cheapest one, it was the one with the best hospital system nobody had ever heard of. We're covering that one specifically, medical access in affordable Texas retirement towns, in the next video. Make sure you're subscribed, because that one goes deeper than any retirement ranking has gone before.